You guys got to see me fixing my hair. Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, May 13th, 2024. And I don't know what episode number this is. I'm not sure I'm going to make an audio episode out of this, but I just got back from Midwest Preparedness Project in Kansas. Yesterday, I drove 12 and a half hours home with a camper. That was fun. It's a good thing Dawn was in the car with me. And then I returned the rental car today, which was a fairly long round trip for that. I did a rental truck that was a 3/4 ton to make sure it was easy to tow. So I thought instead of doing a traditional Monday show today, we would do a basically a Q&A show. So if you ask me questions, I will answer them. And if you don't, this will be like the world's shortest show. But that's how we're going to roll today. So you can ask me anything about any topic. And if I don't know the answer, I will tell you. The way to get my attention is to put it in the comments. And if you're watching this anywhere but Facebook or YouTube, I don't believe the comments show up for me. So you'll need to be on Facebook or YouTube to get your questions in. So I guess the first thing I want to know this afternoon, is what you guys want to know about. Like, are you interested in hearing a holler homestead update? Do you want to know something about the trip? I will say this. It was really fun having just like somebody navigating with me on this trip, because it was supposed to take 10 hours total from my house to Midwest Preparedness. The first day it took 15 and a half hours after all those storms. And the way home, it took me 12 and a half hours. And part of that is because when you're pulling a camper, of course, you're driving slower than you normally would, which is the smart and safe thing to do. But also, when you haven't towed a trailer in a long time, you got to go slower too to be safe. So I had a navigator with me, and every time, like when you're driving and it's kind of quiet, you have time to think about stuff. And every time I had a question for like, I'm like, hey, I wonder why Cairo, the town of Cairo, looks like an abandoned wasteland. And Dawn Gorham was in the car with me, and she looked it up, and I learned all sorts of stuff about Cairo on the way back home, because we'd heard about it. Like, we asked at Midwest Preparedness about Cairo, and it's actually suddenly it's really warm in here. We'd kind of asked why it was a barren wasteland, and somebody mentioned that it floods a lot there because it's between the Ohio River and the Mississippi River, and so it floods. And yes, this is my shirt today. Why, yes, actually, I can drive a stick. Thought you'd like that one. So we looked it up, and it turned out, wow, I just put 2 stripes on my forehead. Look at that for my glasses. It turns out that that's also the site of a pretty famous lynching in 1909 or so, where a black man had raped, with the help of another white man, a white woman, and he was being held in prison or in jail, and not prison, awaiting trial, and they delayed the trial, I think, because they were worried about how violent it could get. And the people of the area descended on the jail, pulled him out, horrible lynching. And then they came back to the jail and grabbed another man who was in there, who was a white man, lynched him as well. And it based on the account, like 10,000 people were involved in this by the end of it, which was just, I had no idea when I was driving through Cairo that that's what had happened there. So I'm going to go back and read more about that eventually. This was sort of a summary thing, so I didn't get to look at some of the source data or other things that had happened there. Apparently, I'm going to have 2 stripes on my forehead for the rest of this because I pulled that hoodie off and it gave me glasses stripes. Okay, so Strong Roots Resources says, listening while heading to Tim's, how goes Hone? Well, so here's the truth. Hone is going better than it was because I wasn't saying no to things. And so I've been saying no to just about everything now. And for example, today, my show topic was supposed to be an overview of how to preserve food, which y'all will get because I have draft show notes for that. But based on how I feel after driving for 12 and a half hours pulling a camper, which means you can't use cruise control, right? So you're like in the same position for a long time. Um, I just decided that I don't think I can give that topic as much energy as it needs. And I want it to be a really good foundation from which we can go into the, the sort of the season of food preservation and hit one topic at a time together in greater depth. But first, we start with the overview. So I think I'm doing better at that, Carrie. And I have started making some pretty hard decisions. Like the problem is, I am really interested in things and I want to do everything, and it's always easy to give other people advice to not do everything, but then like I don't have to listen to my own advice, of course. Um, so I'm not doing everything. I'm cutting way, way back on some things and really been soul searching on the stuff that I love to do. Like we don't have a cheese class here scheduled yet this year. And part of why we've been putting so much resource into making Taj Mahal is to have a classroom here that we can show people some heritage skills. And part of why I don't do that is I'm out speaking at other people's events. And I'm doing my own events like Self Reliance Festival, not here. So I need to decide if I'm going to be at other people's events or have a learning center here. And I'd rather have a learning center here. Doesn't mean I won't ever go to an event, but I realized like how much money I spend to leave here is a lot. Like the resources required for me not to be here are thousands of dollars over a few days. And so if the speaking engagement is not covering that somehow, then it doesn't make as much sense to go. And that may not be the answer I want, but that's the answer that's like real. So I'm just, like looking at that really carefully. And I see Tennessee permaculture is on as well. Okay, I see 14 people here and no questions. So today's show, this is how this goes. You either ask me a question or say a topic you'd like to hear about, or we just sign off and just call ourselves done for the day, because today's show is a variety show. Ask me anything, but if you don't ask, I don't answer. That's that. That's sort of how those things work. So, what else would you all like to hear about? Just put it in the comments, and I'll do my best to give you an answer. The first question was from Carrie from Strong Roots Resources, who incidentally, he has a quarterly meetup at his place in East Tennessee. And his next one is the first Sunday in June. If you want to find out more about that, it will be posted to Living Free in Tennessee later this week. I've forwarded it to Letty to put up there. But also, if you get on the Telegram groups that we have and go to the LFTN Freedom Cell, I know he posted there about it as well. I think it's really great to go out and get to know people. So I was at Midwest Preparedness Project this weekend and the latter part of last week. And I actually experienced a bucket list item while there, which was I've always wanted to see the Aurora Borealis, which is the Northern Lights. And they were visible in Tennessee too. But I was sitting there, I was about to go to bed, like, like I'm going to put my PJs on and loop. And then I heard somebody, I was on John Willis's live, and somebody said, like, hey, the Northern Lights are beautiful tonight. And I was like, oh yeah, I heard those were going to be visible. I wonder if they're visible from Kansas. So Dawn and I like ran out from under the trees and looked up, and sure enough, there was like some reds and some pretty colors. And then we took pictures of them, and it was way more vibrant. So then we just sort of had fun with that. They were supposed to be peak visible between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. And I will admit I was mostly asleep during that time, but I got to see them. And that's something I've always wanted my whole life. I thought I was going to have to travel somewhere like Alaska to see Aurora Borealis. And I will say this, I did not, I think had I just been like not known I was looking for it, I wouldn't have necessarily noticed it because it was very subtle. Then once I saw it, I really saw it. So I wonder if further north they're more vibrant in color or how that works. I'm very curious about that, but it was totally beautiful. There were purples, there were reds. I didn't see the greens that some people have pictures of, but that was pretty darn cool. And it was a great, it was a fun experience to share with a friend. So Tennessee Permaculture asks, are you going to make some music with me sometime? Sure. We just got to do it, man. That means we have to be in person somehow. Um, I've got my keyboard set up. I wish I had a piano, but I don't know where I would put a piano, so I can't just go get one and plop it in here. My house is pretty small for that. But like you have space for the things that you make space for, of course. So, this studio takes up about 50% of my bedroom, and I have a Murphy bed in here for when people come by. So that's the dealio. Okay, guys, gotta bring up topics or this doesn't keep going. I'm just saying. I have been starting to write songs again, which is something I haven't done for a long time. And none of them are written down, so we'll see if any of them turn into actual songs. But I have songs percolating in my head, and I think that's because I finally stopped racing towards the finish line and started like slowing my roll a little bit to give myself space to do things. Like I execute things well, but I want to execute things better. And sometimes I execute things poorly. So that's just something that I've realized is when I go a little bit slower, I can do things a little bit better. And that's sort of like the difference between good and great in some cases. Other times, we all fail at stuff, but we're not going to talk about that. How many plants has Nicole Sauce killed? A lot. Speaking of plants, Donna Dare says, new Tennessee garden question. Anyone successfully grown Roselle hibiscus? I have hibiscus here. I don't know what kind of hibiscus it is, and it's all over my yard. So I guess it would depend on how Roselle hibiscus is different than other hibisci. what's the plural of hibiscuses? Other varieties of hibiscus. Here I have bushes in my yard that bloom every year, and I gather the blooms when I remember to. Today I had a really awesome harvest of wild rose petals. And that's something that I usually spend a lot more time doing because there are two kinds of wild rose in Tennessee that I find, like bigger blooms and blossoms on a vine, and then like those little tiny wet ones. And I found the larger vine on a walk 3 years ago. I propagated it. I put it on my hillside garden, and I had a lot of blooms. So I think in 10 minutes, I had a whole bowl full of these, and I dry them. So they're out on drying racks now. I dry them and then use them in teas, a tea mix I do with mullein and chocolate mint. If I'm not feeling great, I mean, I like the flavor of that tea anyway, but if I'm not feeling great, just to sort of help me feel a little bit better. Beth Emily says, have you ever thought of playing harmonica? I know you're a singer, but it's fun. I have a harmonica. I also have a kazoo. That's my tactical kazoo. I got that from some friends that I played music with who, if you're at my workshop, you've met them, Toby and Ani. They brought it, like we did this thing. We did a little show at SRF, and she had all these different, she always brings like maracas and a tambourine and whatever. And there was a kazoo, and I kept playing the kazoo for like the lead guitar part. But I went up on stage and nobody knew I had the kazoo because it was in my boot. And so it was my boot kazoo, and I pulled it out, and people thought that was pretty funny. So when they left, she's like, you can keep the kazoo. And I'm like, I really want the kazoo. And it stays right by my computer. It's one of the small things in my house that I absolutely know where it is. Unlike my rings, I took my rings off during the spring workshop, and I don't know where they are now. So that's interesting. I think I might have put them in the pocket of my apron and then washed it, but they were not in the washing machine. And it's not a big enough gap for them to go out the drain. So I'm not sure. And then I saw that there was a hole in the pocket, which means these rings could be anywhere and they could be gone forever. And that's kind of sad because one of them in particular, I really, really, really like. However, it is just a material item. So I shall let it go. But yeah, playing, it's amazing to me how many musicians are in our network, like the wider LFTN, TSP, SOE, Toolman Tim network, which I call the community. There's a lot of musicians in the community and a lot of people who've played instruments, and it's kind of fun to see when they come out and jam, like what can happen. And Tennessee Permaculture is one of them. He plays bass, and I'm sure he plays other things as well. Tactical wants to know, was the trip worth it and why? Okay. On a business level, my trip to Midwest Preparedness Project was absolutely not worth it. If I look at how much money I brought in on the trip itself versus how much money it cost me to do the trip. However, well, A, meeting somebody who could help me properly assess the state of my camper roof was really awesome. So Darren looked at that and told me what I need to do to repair it, which Ken Esch has already done. But he also sort of said, so Darren looked at it, and what has happened since when Ken looked at my roof is it's gone over a catastrophic line of sun damage, basically. And I knew I had a problem when the roof leaked the day before we left in my camper. Darren looked at it. He said, okay, so like the rubberized coating the sun has caused it to crack. And in these two places in particular, there's a problem, which I already knew a problem was brewing there from Ken. And he's like, basically, you got to scrape that off and do something with your roof. And you need to do it this year or your whole camper is going to like melt into rotting despair. So we have added a roof replacement to the list of things that get to be done on a Glamper. And that's what I'm doing first before I do anything else. So meeting people like that at events like the ones I talk about, like Self-Reliance Festival, my spring workshop, Midwest Preparedness Project, Kentucky Sustainable Living, Exit and Build Land Summit, which I'm going to be at next week. Those relationships are kind of priceless, and it can be hard to get the right kind of advice on certain things like camper roofs when the person who wants to do the camper roof is giving you like the more expensive bid or something. Like, I know that I have the valid advice. I knew I had it from Ken too. So like I don't want to imply anything about Ken Ish's advice because he gave me this basically the same advice in a different way. When he looked at it, I think it hadn't gone over the cliff yet. So my camper now has a tarp roof until I deal with it. I'm planning to work on it on Memorial Day weekend, assuming that nothing else is scheduled on the Memorial Day weekend. I was going to do a homesteader meet up that weekend, and then I realized that it was Memorial Day weekend and probably people wouldn't want to come out. So the ways that the trip was worth it to me most, though, was that Midwest Preparedness is more of a camping event than a go to all the sessions event. And being out in the woods with people I can trust and the time in the car with Dawn, like those things, I did come back rejuvenated. I discovered Kangen water a little more deeply than I have in the past. Like I was drinking Kangen water for 2 whole days there. And I started feeling a lot better at that event. And I think the water had something to do with it because I just haven't been physically right for a while. And I was really not physically right, like right after the spring workshop. So I got a pretty good reset there, even though I'm tired right now from driving. So I would say this particular trip was worth it. But if I look at the spreadsheet, it didn't make the money that would justify how much it cost. It was more like it was a vacation where I got to do a presentation, and I got to sell some coffee, which offset some of the expenses. I've got 4 songs released so far this year and finished number 5 yesterday. 1 a month is the goal. I have an extremely overbuilt recording studio if you want to send me something. Okay. I'll see what I got. It won't be for a bit because I'm speaking at Exit and Build Land Summit. And then I'm taking some time here. We have a chicken processing workshop on June 8th. So we're going to get geared up for that and some other stuff. But I'm taking some weeks of really concentrating on some specific goals. And one of those goals is not write a new song. So if a new song accidentally happens, which totally does happen to me, I might send you some. Donna says the fruiting type that calluses for tea, jam, etc. Fruiting type, does mine fruit? Can't remember if mine fruits. I will pay attention to it this year. I don't do a lot with my hibiscus, so I don't know a lot about it, Donna. Other than like I have hibiscus that's going. If she says if she's successful, she'll let us know. Definitely. Yeah, Strong Roots Resources says boot kazoo. What else you guys want to hear about? I did travel with, the Glamper for the first time with the battery system installed that's for the solar system, and it's really interesting because the inverter drains the battery about 20% a day. I went 24 hours without recharging it to see how we do just normal usage, and Dawn and I, a couple of times, were like, "Maybe we won't turn on the light right now," but basically, you have to, um, just try doing normal usage for that to be good, and so what I did was calculated. I ended up using 13% of the battery in one day, and that included just normal lights. When I was cooking, I was running the overhead fan, and I didn't run the air conditioner because it's not really intended to run off. I mean, I can run the air conditioner off battery, but it'll go maybe an hour and a half, I would guess, on the battery before I had to recharge the battery. So it doesn't really make sense unless solar panels are on and charging at capacity to run the air conditioner to do that on battery. I do have a generator I can do that with. So that was kind of a fun little experiment. I am actually going to talk with Sean about the use the like the power usage of the I just forgot the name of the thing. This is how tired I am. Woo, we got the battery and the inverter. Yeah, couldn't think of the word inverter. So the power usage of the inverter in 24 hours is actually higher than the power usage of everything else in my camper in that same period of time. So uh, that's something I just wanna talk to him about and ask, like, does that make sense? The inverter uses about as much power as a 60-watt light bulb would in 24 hours, and then its job is to, like, power the things and, like, smart know if it's powering from the battery, if it's powering from panels, if it's powering from the grid. The other thing I learned about it on the trip was that if the inverter gets turned off or the battery goes to 0, the inverter won't turn on unless I plug it into the grid right now, and we think that's a setting that it has. It may be a safety setting, I'm not sure, but I either have to fire up a generator or plug it into the grid for it to get sort of that initial whatever surge. I can't just turn on the battery and have the battery start the inverter, which is interesting. And Hancock, I'm not going to answer your question because that's dumb. So you guys ask me anything, but I reserve the right to not answer questions that are dumb. How's the new truck? All right. So you all know I rented a truck for this trip because I just bought a new to me truck that was used and I didn't want to be like halfway to Kansas on the side of the road having discovered something unfortunate. So the truck is doing well. We had a lot of work done on it after buying it just to make sure it's all in good shape, like the spark plugs and the drive coils and the all the fluids replaced, brakes adjusted, one set of brakes replaced. I had my oil pressure was low and it caused the check engine light to come on, and that was the oil pressure switch. So we had that switch replaced, which now my oil pressure is fine. So it's actually running great. We just drove it to Murfreesboro and back to return the truck I rented, and I drove it home. And I like the truck a lot. It needs new tires next, but I am pretty happy with that purchase. And then Tactical has a Jeep now. So I am looking for an everyday driver because the truck is really the homestead truck, but it will be my daily driver um, until I find the right vehicle. Hey Wayne, I haven't seen you on a live before, have I? What is next for events in the Pacific Northwest? There's a homesteading event in Idaho, which is close to you. But I can't remember what it's called, but Clydesdale Homestead volunteered at it. It's like the Modern Homesteading Conference or something there. I heard it was great last year and really well attended. I would definitely look that one up. I'm not going to be out there speaking this year because I have said no to everything for the rest of the year, speaking engagement wise, unless it's got a speaker fee that will pay for my house sitting needs. I won't be out there. I will be out in the Pacific Northwest, not very close to you, and probably do a meetup. I expect to be in Medford, Oregon at some point this year. But that I think it's the Modern Homesteading Conference. I think that one sounded like a really good time last year. And then Paul Wheaton at Permies.com does have a series of like week-long events coming up in July that you should check out at Permies. I think it's at Permies.com. They've got a permaculture design course and a bunch of other stuff. It's a bunch of off-grid stuff if you're interested in that. Okay. Any other questions, my friends? Had fun making K-cups on the road. That was interesting. So I wanted to see how the K-cups were. So that's what we used for our coffee. Donna says, do you have a Middle Tennessee butcher shop recommendation as we're not raising our own beef here? I have used Underground before, and I think it's Underground Meat Processing, but it might be Underground Butcher. They have a website that I will look up while I'm talking to you. And they've always done a good job for me. Their pricing, meat processing, their pricing is a little higher than other people's, but they do quality work. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. It's undergroundprocessing.com. And that's in Walling, Tennessee, which is sort of near Sparta. And then I went to another, let's see, processors. I can't remember their name right now. And I don't have my address book right here. So I used another processor in Sparta that I really liked. It's really funny. I typed into the search bar meat processors and it changed it to metals. Hillis, Hillis, custom processing. That's another one that they did a good job. If you use either of them, you'll want to be specific on what you want from your cow. Like they'll give you a cut sheet. And if you don't understand how to fill it out and you know you can kind of describe what you want, they can help you fill it out. I like to ask them to keep all of the bones that they possibly can in that because I turn them into bone broth later. And in fact, this year, because when you do bone broth, like the fat from the beef floats, right? And then you put it in the fridge and then it's solid again. So you get that fat. I had it made into soap this year, not all of it, but I had a good amount of it made into soap this year. So, and it's called tallow, by the way. It's weird. Like when I'm this tired, words go away. So I used beef tallow for the soap. And by I mean Sarah, who made me a rosemary scented soap with the beef tallow. And it's really nice with that. Yeah. So Hillis Custom Processing, that's the Tacticals got it in there. They're pretty good. Tennessee Permaculture says there's a good butcher shop in Gallatin. There are butcher shops all over the place, but those two I have definitely used and really liked them. Yeah, thank you. Yes, great broth. Need them. And the other thing is I want as many organs as possible, and I keep like parts that other people wouldn't necessarily keep. And you just want them to know that. Something I like to do is get the eye of round whole and then defrost it and cut it up the way I want it cut up. That actually reduces your butcher bill. But if you are reselling like half a cow, most people don't want to do that. I turned mine into Bosderma this year and people really liked it. So I will continue to get my eye of round whole and cut it down from there. And then the only issue I had, I can't remember which processor it was, but one of the processors took a perfectly good brisket and cut it into like 5 smaller pieces because they were packaging it for quote unquote 2. And so I also specify how many pounds of ground I want in the ground package because they'll say, are we packaging this for family? Is it 2 people, 1 person, 4 people? And based on your answer to that question, they put a different amount in the tubes or a different amount of ground at a time. And what I know here is that we want at least 3 pounds to 5 pounds of ground beef at a time when we're cooking almost anything. Like I'm going to go grab a bunch of single pound packages because one of the cows that I share with somebody always gets packaged for 2 people and that's 1 pound. And they don't feed a hungry redneck. So they don't understand. If you go to Hillis Custom Processing and you want 30% or 20% fat in your ground beef, you need to specify that because their default is 10% fat. And for a ketogenic eater, that's not enough fat. So I have to add fat back to their ground because I didn't know they did that, because most default to 80%. And he was like, I do 90% like meat and 10% fat because you want that quality, ma'am. And I'm like, I'm not even going to say anything right now, but next time I'm going to specify that I want 30% fat in that, which means then less fat for tallow, and then also keep the fat and make your tallow, because even if you don't use it for soap like I did, it's really good in other ways. It's great to use instead of oils for starting a saute. Um, the deal is to use it. So I used to save my tallow and not use it because I didn't know how to use it. Like, if you're going to save your tallow, start learning ways to use it. Yes, you can make candles out of it. You can make soap out of it. I'm sure you could use it in salves. I haven't tried that. I would love to try. I might do that. I might do a comfrey salve with some of my tallow. If I'm going to use it in something like soap or a salve, I will put a scent in there because it does still kind of smell like beef tallow. So a stronger scent like peppermint or rosemary in the case of my soap is helpful. And then I also, when I use the tallow for cooking, I make the tallow and I don't scrape any. Sometimes there's like little bits that cling to it. If you're using it for soaps or salves or candles, you're going to want to pour that through a strainer so you don't have weird hunks in your candles. I have also not made candles from my tallow, but I'll probably do one this year just to say that I have, so I can be like, here's how the candles work. I've made candles out of other things though. So tallow candles, I'm sure, smell like tallow. And that's probably why they have fallen out of favor, but they work like candles. So that's kind of fun to do. Yeah, Donna says, thank you. Yes, great broth. Need them. Oh yeah, Tactical says Hillis Custom Processing also has USDA cuts of meat for sale. So if you want to have if you want to source meat more locally, they're in Sparta, Tennessee, and that they sell cuts of meat that look fairly decent quality. I buy whole cows, so I don't really worry about that, but I can see that other people do. Okay, guys, I'm not seeing a lot of questions or topics you'd like me to cover. If we don't get one in about the next 2 minutes, we'll wrap this show up today. I just wanted to make sure we had a show today, even though I drove for a really long time yesterday. And this is just me admitting that after a day of driving like that, we don't like go balls to the wall on schedule. Apparently, I was feeling Halloweeny today because I'm wearing my witch on a broomstick shirt and I am drinking from my Halloween cup. So I'm feeling witchy, guys. Ah, witchy woman. I heard that Nicole Sauce burst out into song is on many bingo cards for things. So you can almost always count on that happening at least once any event I MC. That is a thing. I'll see if I can get through exit and build without bursting into song, but that it could happen. The problem is when y'all say lines of songs in your questions, your comments, or whatever, what happens in the ADHD brain is that song starts playing, and it's very hard not to start singing the song, even though you're trying to ask me a serious question. I did have a first at Midwest Preparedness Project. A small child asked me a question after my presentation. So that was kind of fun. And I think we'll have the video out about that later because Dawn Gorham was there and she took a video of me like talking to this little girl who wanted to tell me about their clogged sink. I did a presentation called Yes, You Can Go It Alone. And it was all about, building, like you can just build your stuff. You don't have to wait for the right person to be with you. You don't have to wait for the right community to join. If you want to be a homesteader, start homesteading. If you're a woman who doesn't have the man skills, start with one man skill and figure it out. And then acknowledge that maybe your bioengineering is a little bit different. Like we have a lower center of gravity, and some of the tools aren't made for the size of our hands. And you just got to figure out your way around it. Like when I when I unload lumber, I don't lift as much as some of the men in the hauler. And so I take twice as many trips as they do because I'm not going to hurt my back trying to show how manly I am by carrying multiple 2x4s at once if what I can carry right now is one 2x4. So Red Flyer says, no, please do burst into song during exit and build. Yeah, we'll see how that goes, Rebecca. We'll see how that goes. Okay, well, if there's no other topics y'all want to hear from me today, I just want to thank you for joining our live stream. We will be live tomorrow with Kiri Tortlinger from Thunderhill Farms and John Willis from Special Operations Equipment. That live stream is at 12:30 and will not get booted for a different topic. And then later this week, 9:30 on Friday, is Homestead Happenings. I won't be on that show because I'll be at Exit and Build Land Summit. But the Redneck is taking my show over that day and just going it solo. And who knows what you'll hear about from the Redneck. He has a different perspective on the homestead than I do, for sure. So I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in two ways. One, get your coffee at holleroast.com. We do have a soft launch of the K-Cups up there right now if you're interested in K-Cups. And everything else is roasted to order. But those K-Cups are about the freshest you're going to get on the K-Cup market because I figured out how to get small enough batches packaged that I can sell them and then re-roast and then go. So the other way you can support the show is to become a member. Head over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. And if you're planning to be at the Exit and Build Land Summit, please let me know. Shoot me an email, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.